All right, so thinking about a career in tax compliance, huh? You're ready to dive into the world of regulations and make sure the government's finances are, well, in compliance.
It's more exciting than it sounds.
Definitely not your average desk job, right? And to help you land that dream role in tax compliance, we're going to deep dive into some must-know interview questions.
Because acing that interview is all about preparation.
Absolutely. We're going to equip you with the knowledge and the confidence to wow those interviewers.
Exactly. We'll cover the ins and outs of the role, common pitfalls to avoid, and even some insider tips to make you stand out from the crowd.
Let's do it. We'll be drawing insights from the career guide and the interview guide, and we'll sprinkle in how RoleCatcher's AI can give you that extra edge throughout the process.
It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket. But more on that later.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly does a tax compliance officer do? The career guide paints a pretty dynamic picture.
Dynamic is an understatement.
Right. Think of it as being a financial detective. You're piecing together the puzzle of regulations, making sure everything adds up, and helping businesses stay on the right side of the law.
You're diving into the world of taxes, managing revenue collection, ensuring compliance, and, oh yeah, navigating the ever-changing maze of financial regulations.
And that's a key point. It's always changing. So how do you demonstrate in an interview that you can handle that constant evolution?
That's where their soft skills come in. Adaptability, a thirst for knowledge, and maybe a little bit of a detective's curiosity.
Yeah, I like that, a detective's curiosity. Speaking of curiosity, let's jump into some real-life interview questions. First up is a classic. Can you explain your experience with tax compliance regulations?
All right, time to show them what you know. But here's the thing. Don't just rattle off every regulation you've ever encountered.
Right, because that's a surefire way to lose their attention.
Exactly. Instead, tailor your answer to the specific role and industry you're interviewing for.
So do your homework. Research the company, understand their specific tax compliance needs, and then connect the dots.
Precisely. Highlight the regulations that are most relevant to them, and back it up with concrete examples from your own experience.
So if you're interviewing for a role heavy on corporate tax, you wouldn't necessarily delve into the intricacies of estate tax, even if you have some experience there, right?
Exactly. It's about relevance. Show them you understand their world, their challenges, and how your skills can directly address those.
And this is where I think RoleCatcher can be a game changer. Their AI can actually analyze the job description and suggest talking points tailored to that specific role.
I've seen it in action, and it's pretty impressive.
Okay, next question. This one might seem a bit curveball. What are some common tax compliance issues that businesses face? Why would they ask that?
It's all about perspective. They want to see that you understand the challenges businesses face from their side of the table.
So you're not just an enforcer, you're a problem solver.
Exactly. And this is where you can really demonstrate your value. Think about common pitfalls like misclassifying workers for tax purposes, or maybe not staying current with those ever-changing regulations.
Ah, yes. The dreaded keeping up with the tax code challenge. It feels like a full-time job in itself.
And it is. That's why it's so important to emphasize your commitment to continuous learning in this field.
It really is. And that brings us to another common interview question, right? How do you actually stay up to date with those changes? Because those tax codes are evolving faster than the latest smartphone.
You're not kidding. It's a constant game of catch-up. Employers want to see that you're proactive, right? Resourceful. This is your time to really showcase that you're a lifelong learner.
Okay, so what's your secret? How do you stay ahead of the game?
Well, first off, I'd definitely mention any industry publications you follow, like the Journal of Taxation,
Yeah, right.
or professional organizations you're part of, the National Association of Tax Professionals, for example.
Like you've got this secret society of tax gurus, always huddled up discussing the latest deductions.
Something like that. And don't forget about technology. Online resources are huge. Heck, even using a platform like RoleCatcher, it can keep you updated on industry trends.
Oh, that's right. RoleCatcher isn't just about researching roles. It's also about practicing those interview responses.
Exactly. And their AI can actually analyze your video responses, which
Yeah.
I know sounds a little Big Brother-ish.
Just a little bit, yeah, but also kind of cool.
Right. But it can be so helpful. Think of it as having a personal coach giving you feedback on things you might not even notice, like your posture, your tone of voice, little things that can make a big difference.
Those subtle cues that can make or break an interview. Okay, let's tackle another question. This one always makes me a little nervous. Can you describe a time when you had to resolve a complex tax compliance issue? They want a whole novel.
They do, but a short story will do.
Mm.
This is where that STAR method really comes in handy.
Yeah.
Situation, task, action, result. Helps you tell a compelling story, but keep it structured and concise.
So instead of getting lost in the weeds of tax jargon, you're telling a story that actually showcases your problem-solving skills. Like, let's say you were working with a client who was facing a penalty for late filing. How would you approach that using the STAR method?
Perfect example. So first you set the scene right. Your client, a small business owner, facing this hefty penalty because they missed a filing deadline. Then you outline the task at hand, which is to figure out why the filing was late and see what options you have for maybe reducing that penalty.
Okay, so we've got the situation and the task. What about the action and the result?
The action is where you really get to shine. You explain how you collected all the necessary documentation, reviewed the client's financial records, and ultimately identified a valid reason for that late filing. Maybe there was a natural disaster or a serious illness, something totally unavoidable.
So you're not just pointing out a problem. You're showing them that you can think critically and find solutions.
Exactly. And then the result. Ideally, you were able to argue for that penalty abatement right. Saved your client thousands of dollars and a whole lot of stress. Everyone's happy.
Talk about a happy ending. See, that's the power of storytelling in an interview.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Another common question. How do you prioritize your workload when you're juggling multiple clients or projects? Because let's be real, tax compliance isn't just about meeting deadlines. It's about juggling a million deadlines.
And each one probably has its own set of complexities and regulations.
Exactly. So how do you demonstrate that you can handle the heat?
Well, anyone can say they're organized right. This is your chance to back it up with concrete examples. Do you use specific project management techniques? Maybe you prioritize tasks based on deadlines or the complexity of the issue or the client's needs. Whatever your system is, make sure you can explain it clearly.
So instead of just saying, I make a to-do list, you're giving them a peek into your organizational brain.
Precisely. Maybe you live and breathe by color-coded spreadsheets or you're a master of the Pomodoro technique. Whatever works for you, own it.
Show them you're not just keeping your head above water, but you're swimming laps around those deadlines. Love it. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Imagine you're interviewing for a role that involves working with international clients. A question they might ask is, how do you ensure that your clients comply with tax regulations while also minimizing their tax liability? Now that sounds like a tightrope walk.
It is. You've got to ensure your clients are playing by the rules, but you also want to help them optimize their tax situation, legally and ethically, of course. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Okay, but where do you even begin with something like that?
Well, it's where your in-depth knowledge of tax law really comes into play. You can talk about your familiarity with things like tax credits and deductions, incentives that can benefit your clients without raising any red flags.
So you're like a strategic advisor, right? Not just an enforcer. You're helping them navigate the complexities of the tax code while always staying on the right side of the law.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to emphasize your commitment to ethical practices in your answer. You're not there to find loopholes or bend the rules. You're there to make sure your clients meet their tax obligations responsibly.
It's about building trust and credibility, not just with your clients, but with potential employers too. Okay, I think we have time for one more question in this deep dive. Let's talk about conflict resolution. Because let's face it, dealing with taxes, there are bound to be disagreements.
Oh, yeah. It's inevitable, especially when you have different interpretations of those ever so clear tax codes.
So how do you handle those situations? Especially when you're dealing with strong personalities or people who might not be as well versed in the intricacies of tax law.
Exactly. It's like navigating a minefield of opinions and interpretations.
Sometimes it feels that way. But you know, at the end of the day, you're not there to win an argument.
Right. It's not about being right. It's about finding the right solution.
Exactly. So you've got to park your ego at the door and approach the situation with empathy. Really try to understand the other person's perspective. Active listening is key here, right?
Absolutely. Don't just listen to plot your next counter argument. Really listen to understand their point of view. And then, ask clarifying questions. Maybe reiterate their concerns back to them just to show that you're hearing them.
Yeah, show them that you're really trying to get where they're coming from before you present your side.
Right. And then when you do present your perspective, do it calmly, respectfully, and back up your points with evidence.
Like citing specific tax codes or relevant case law?
Exactly. Solid evidence can really make a difference, but remember your tone and your approach are just as important.
It's about being assertive, but not aggressive, right?
No.
Knowledgeable, but not condescending.
You got it. Now, sometimes, even with the best intentions, you might hit a wall. You just can't seem to find common ground.
What do you do then?
Well, that's when you might need to suggest bringing in a third party, maybe a supervisor or a senior colleague, someone who can help mediate the discussion.
That's a good point. Knowing when to escalate a situation is a skill in itself. It shows that you're not afraid to ask for help and find the best solution for everyone involved. Okay, let's shift gears one last time. Let's say you're an experienced candidate and they hit you with this question. Can you describe how you would conduct a tax compliance audit for a large corporation? How do you even begin to answer that?
It's a big question for sure, and it's your chance to really flex those expertise muscles. But here's the thing. Even though you might be tempted to wow them with everything you know,
Resist the urge to go into full-on lecture mode.
exactly. Keep it concise. Focus on the highlights, the key steps involved in a large-scale audit.
So, like, what would be a good starting point?
You could start with your approach to risk assessment. How do you identify those areas of potential concern? Then you'd want to touch upon your methodology for gathering and analyzing all that financial data. Maybe mention specific software or tools you're proficient in.
So you're giving them a peek behind the curtain, showing them your process, your efficiency, and your attention to detail.
Right. And if you can work in a quick story, a real-life example of a time you successfully navigated a complex audit, that's even better. But again, keep it brief, impactful, and most importantly, relevant to the question.
Showcase that experience without getting lost in the weeds.
Gotcha. It sounds like nailing these interview questions is really a balancing act of showcasing your knowledge while also keeping things concise and engaging.
It's a fine line, but with practice, you'll find that sweet spot.
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect after all. And speaking of practice, RoleCatcher's AI can be a huge help with that.
Right.
You can practice your answers, get feedback on your delivery, and walk into that interview feeling like the tax whiz you are.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, a huge thank you to our resident tax expert for sharing all of these amazing insights. And to our listeners, best of luck on your tax compliance officer interviews. Remember, you've got this.
That's luck.
And we'll catch you all on the next deep dive.